Love. When asked by the Pharisees which of the many laws is the most important, Jesus responded, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets." Matthew 22:37-38. With these words, Jesus quoted, with a difference, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5, and Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18 and verse 34. As presented in the Greek and later English translations of Matthew's Gospel, Jesus slightly modified the Deuteronomy verses he quotes. Deuteronomy commands the love of God in three ways: with the whole heart, soul, and might. However, Jesus commands the love of God with the whole heart, soul, and mind, as pointed out by Petrie. An obvious textual reason is that biblical Hebrew, which Deuteronomy was written in, does not have a separate word for mind. Instead, biblical Hebrew used the word lev for mind, heart, and will. However, the 250 BC Septuagint Greek translation of the Old Testament that was used by the New Testament writers translates the three Hebrew words in Deuteronomy 6:5, which is levab, nephesh, and meod, with three Greek words, kardias, suxes, dunai, meos, and does not translate the Hebrew word meod with the Greek word for mind, dianoia, that is distinct from heart. The reason for the difference could be, Petrie speculates, that Jesus, through the Greek translation, wants to further emphasize the interiorization of the law and therefore replaces the command to love with all our might or strength with a term that is more closely associated with the interior dimension of the person, the mind. Jesus does not change the command of loving our neighbor as yourself, but rather gives us the ability to fulfill this command of loving our neighbor as ourself. The ability to fulfill the law is by relying on the relationship Jesus offers us, by relying on the grace Jesus gives to us that we are to participate in with our hearts, souls, and minds. The term neighbor, further comments Petrie, is defined both in Leviticus and by Jesus in the same way. Both define neighbor as a person living near us, regardless if they are Jewish or non-Jewish. This is evident in Leviticus, since after commanding that you shall love your neighbor as yourself, Leviticus then includes with the term neighbor a non-Israelite stranger with the words, "The stranger immigrant who sojourns with you shall be to you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." Leviticus 19:18-34. Here comments Miller, God cautions Israel not to become like their Egyptian oppressors by becoming oppressive themselves, for God has preferential love, but not exclusive love for the widow, the orphan, and the stranger, foreign guest worker, in Miller's words. Building upon this universal law of love that cares especially for those on the margins of society and providing us with the means to fulfill the law, Jesus commands to love all our neighbors as an expression of our love of God. Hamilton also demonstrates Jesus' two great commandments are in continuity with the Old Testament. According to Hamilton, the two great commandments are a summary of the 10 commandments. Jesus' first commandment is a condensation of commandment 1 through 3 of the 10 commandments that deal with human beings' relationship with God. And Jesus' second commandment is a condensation of the remaining commandments that are on how humans relation to one another. Furthermore, adds Hamilton, Jesus' response to the rich young man who asked him, "Teacher, what good must I do to have eternal life?" indicates that the two great commandments are to be integrated with one another and consequently are to inform one another. If this is not the case, then either the display of loving God is false and merely a show or the act of loving one's neighbor is false, since it is not formed by love, worship, and belief in God. The goal of eternal life at the end of the rich young man's question implies that the rich man is concerned with love of God, since God is eternal life. For this reason, Jesus responds by encouraging him to follow commandments 4 through 10, which regulate human relations, since they indicate that love of God is genuine and not hypocritical.